Welcome to the Dragon Coastal Races route brief. My name is Ben Morris. I'm one of the race directors.
So in this video, I'm going to talk you through the key points on the route, what to look out for, where to pay more attention. I'm going to highlight key areas where people have gone wrong in the past, talk through the route diversions, and importantly identify where to leave the Wales coast path. I'm just going to remind you, ensure you have downloaded this year's GPS route. In the past, we have had people download previous year's event GPSs, follow them and add considerable distance to their route.
Firstly, make sure you keep vigilant for the Wales Coast Path signs at junctions and our arrows, especially when you're leaving the coastal path. Make sure you're paying attention to your GPS and your map. Make sure you have enough battery to run your GPS device, because if you need your phone, you must have additional battery pack in case you need to use your phone in an emergency. If you are lost or have any doubts, please call us to confirm. So as is a coastal race, we need to be aware of tidal considerations. And the tide times for this year you can see in that red box to the left. And these tide times are also printed on the map. So at the start of Oscillate at 2 o'clock, tide will be going out. And the first place you're going to encounter the tide or tidal considerations is at Port Einan. So as you come off the cliff tops there, come down past the monument, you go through the campsite, you come out on the beach by the youth hostel. At this point you just need to make sure you're staying on the sand dunes and pushing on the higher path rather than dropping down onto the beach. And you may also have realised there that the checkpoint is now in the village hall, but we'll talk more about that in a bit. At Oxridge Bay, cross the entire bay by staying on the beach. The tide will be going out. When you get to the stream, you can wade or tiptoe through it, but if it is too deep, then turn inland to cross the stream using the bridge. This is a new bridge which has been moved slightly upstream, but it is easy to see and locate. At Three Cliffs Bay, you also need to follow the high tide route. This is on the GPS file. This is to ensure that every year the route remains the same and that we are not constantly changing the route based on the tides. So it just allows us to standardise the course. So here you will drop down towards the beach, then you'll head up to the Three Cliffs campsite. Following that high tide diversion route, it's the same route we use on the Gower coastal races. Please just do not cross those stepping stones. And then again at Caswell Bay, around 19 miles, you're going to need to follow the high tide route. It's compulsory just to follow that high tide route. So there's less tidal considerations on the second half of the 100-mile route and on the 50-mile route in general. And the main one is at Ogmore River stepping stones. The leading 100-mile runners will likely get to the stepping stones and the tide will be high, so if it is unsafe to cross, then head over to the high tide route. So if you're in the middle of the pack of the 100-mile race, you should be arriving at the stepping stones as sun rises, maybe about 5 AM, but from 5 AM they should be crossable for most runners. If you're on the 50-mile course, they'll also be crossable. So if you're chasing cut-offs, and getting here towards 1 o'clock, it may be worth just going straight over to the high tide route. The high tide route does not really add any distance here, but if you go to the river, then discover the stepping stones are too high and then have to retrace your steps, it will add some distance to it and time. So if you're getting here after 1, I'd recommend just following straight across, crossing the river using the high tide route. And it works out about the same distance and time. There'll be no time penalties or disqualifications if you do decide to do that. Ultimately, cross if you are happy to do so, but if you prefer not to cross over the stepping stones or the tide is high, just follow that high tide route. So Dragon 100 runners get access to 2 drop bags at 3 locations, and Dragon 50 runners get access to 1 drop bag. So on the 100, drop bag A will be accessed at checkpoint 3 at the Mumbles, and then be moved down the course to checkpoint 9 at Lampwet. The Mumbles is around 22.5-ish miles and Lampwet is around 77 miles. And then drop bag B will be available to access at Kenfig only, and that's around 56 miles, so just over halfway. And the drop bag for the Dragon 50-miler runners will be available at checkpoint 4 in Lampwet, which is about 27 miles, just over halfway. So the drop bags are provided for you, and you can collect them either at the race registration at the race starts, or if you're using the coach, you can collect them just before you get on the coach between 9 AM and 10 AM on Saturday morning for the 100 runners, and between 5:30 AM and 6 AM for the 50-mile runners. And they will be handed into the race team at the race start in Rossilly or Kenfig immediately after registration closes, just before the race starts. And all of your kit must fit in the red drawstring bags provided. We do not have any capacity to transport any larger bags. Please, no valuables or breakable items in the bag, and the bags are left at your own risk. We aim to get the bags back to the race finish by approximately 19:30, 7:30 PM on Sunday evening, once the checkpoints have closed. For illustration, this shows you the size of the drop bag with a large pair of size 9.5 hockers, spare socks, spare leggings, spare winter base layer, spare t-shirt, some additional energy products for the second half of the race, and some tape for blisters and some body glide and lip balm. So these will packed into the drop bag comfortably, and there's space for a little bit more if you needed to. Before we dive into the route brief fully, I need to warn you that there is another walking event on across the weekend, and that's on the Gower and the Swansea Bay sections of the route. So the other walking event will likely have signs out, so only follow the branded run, walk, crawl signs and our GPS trace unless clearly told otherwise by our marshals. There won't be many signs out on the first 20 miles because the route is fully marked with the coastal path signs or the high tide diversions, as I have talked about just now, and we'll talk about more in just a minute. But as I mentioned, the main areas the routes cross are on the first 20 miles, so just please be mindful. And only follow directions from our run, walk, crawl marshals. In the sections through the Avon Forest, which are not on the Wales Coast Path, after you leave Swansea, you can expect to see running arrows and luminous flags at all the junctions. The race starts at the tip of the peninsula at the lookout station by the Worm's Head. There's a short walk here from the registration. Registration is in the Causeway Cafe. If you look out for our large orange registration flags, there's a large toilet block then in the National Trust car park. So on that section, you follow the Wales Coast Path along the cliff top. It hugs between the cliff top and there's a farm wall. It's relatively straightforward and it's really well signposted. When you get to Port Einan Monument, turn left, follow the GPS and the Wales Coast Path signs down towards the beach. The path goes through the middle of a campsite, comes out by the YHA. You're going to need to stay high on the path through the sand dunes, and you'll exit by the roundabout and beachfront. Then from the roundabout you need to head inland. The checkpoint is in the village hall this year, and that's the same location that we use on the Gower coastal races. So you'll need to leave the coast path there, head in towards the village hall, follow the GPS trace. We'll put a couple of markers out. Once you've visited the checkpoint, retrace your steps, head back to the coast path and continue along the coast. Approximately 2k after leaving checkpoint 1 in Port Einan, the Wales Coast Path heads inland around the field. This is signposted with Wales Coastal Path signs. The Wales Coast Path then crosses that field via a stile and continues along the coast. At this point, you should keep following the Wales coast path around the coast. In 2022 and some previous editions of the race, we have headed inland and cut Oxwich Point off, but it's now compulsory for this year that the route goes around Oxwich Point. Once you arrive in Oxwich Bay, you'll cross onto the beach and car park area through a hole in the wall. At Oxwich Bay, you can then cross the bay on the beach rather than following the Wales Coast Path through the nature reserve. It's a bit quicker going through the beach, and that's totally acceptable. Approximately 2k on the beach, you'll reach a stream. When the tide is out, that's quite easy to just wade across or tiptoe across. When the tide's in, it's quite a lot deeper, so you're going to need to just head inland, as you can see on the map and the GPS trace, cross over the bridge, and then regain the GPS trace and route along and in front of the sand dunes. About a k after the stream, you need to take a left straight up onto the cliff top, up through a sand dune path. The GPS file is really accurate here. If you've done our Gower races, you'll know this route. It follows the exact same route as the Gower races. Now, once you hit the cliff top, then you need to take a right, continue east along the Wales Coast Path. Follow the Wales Coast Path signs towards Three Cliffs Bay. You should drop down the sand dunes into Three Cliffs Bay. You then need to follow the high tide route out of the bay up towards the campsite, through the campsite on the Wales Coast Path high tide diversion, and then back along the river on the other side. As we previously mentioned, it's important that you don't cross the stepping stones. The compulsory route is the route that follows the high tide diversion. So you follow the river back to the coast and regain the cliff top. Once you regain the cliff top and back on that coast path, can get a little bit tricky here with lots of little sandy trods coming off that typically come off and go back, meet up a bit further down. But as long as you keep going in the same direction, you typically end up in the right place on the coast path, and it gets a bit more obvious closer to the village you get. The important point here is to avoid going into that golf course. You should be sticking to the outside of the dunes along the cliff tops. If you're in the golf course, just come south and pull out of it. The checkpoint is then in the car park at Southgate.
Leave Southgate checkpoint and follow along the Wales Coast Path, which is next to a small lane. At Hunt's Farm, the Wales Coast Path heads right, but here you can go straight along the road to avoid going around Pawley Head. Just before you reach Caswell Bay, follow the high tide route around Caswell Bay. It takes you onto the road, so obviously be careful here. You follow the road down to the bay. It's compulsory to follow the high tide route signs, and the GPS shows this route. After crossing the main entrance to the bay, past the car park and the toilets, you can regain the Wales Coast Path behind the cafe, which takes you up onto the cliff tops. It can be tricky to find this, but the coast path does go up behind the cafes.
Follow the obvious Wales Coast Path along the cliff top. It's well signposted again. Once you arrive at the next bay, which is Langham Bay, you cross directly over the bay, so go all the way across the clear bay. And then at the far end of the bay, just before the coast path heads round up to the Mumbles Head, you need to leave the Wales Coast Path and head inland towards the checkpoint. This is going to ensure the distance is 100 miles and you're not adding extra distance. There'll be running arrows at all the junctions, and the GPS trace will clearly show you the way to go. The checkpoint is in Victoria Hall on the Mumbles. What I would do and it's a good idea, is to just check this location and maybe the one at Oxbridge Bay and any others you're interested out using Google Maps. And as you'll be doing a lot less training now. So the checkpoint provides the first opportunity to access your drop bag. Many people will change shoes and socks here as there's not much sand now until after halfway. I'd also advise comfy shoes for the next section as there's a lot of hard pack, trail, forest tracks, cycle tracks, that sort of thing. Also check your feet for hot spots or blister rubbing. Then you can wash them here before putting clean socks on. This is important. It could save you race ending issues 50 miles down the course. You should just get on top of your feet hygiene. We have to take lots of feet at the Lampwick aid station over the last couple of years and around aid stations around that part where people hadn't looked after their feet earlier on in the route. You can also top up your food supplies for the night section. Often people put in a couple of food or drink options that are personal preferences, things that you may not find at a checkpoint. Before you leave, check your head torch battery and phone battery for the night and consider adding a battery pack and a charger lead here, especially if you're using your phone as additional nav. You may want a change of top or an extra layer here for the night section, again depending on the conditions. And remember to fuel up at the checkpoint before you leave. So once you leave the checkpoint, turn left out the door, hit the coast and then follow the well-marked cycle path along Swansea Bay all the way to the docks. At the end of the docks is an area which is not always clear, so keep an eye on your GPS trace and eyes peeled for signage. The route here seen in the picture on the right avoids a building site, and the latest and updated GPS trace shows this. So once you cross over the docks, again follow the Wales Coast Path signs, brings you out on the Tennant Canal footpath, which you'll follow along the canal footpath for 2 miles. The footpath comes to a natural end on the road, so you take a right turn when you hit the road. Just follow down to the main roundabout, take a left, and after about a mile on the cycle path, you turn a right and take a turn over the A48 bridge. Once you've crossed over the large A48 bridge, then follow the road directly alongside and to the left of McDonald's. On the next section, you head into the forest. You need to keep your eyes peeled at junctions. We'll have some extra running tape and running arrows out. Approximately 400 metres after that McDonald's, the pavement will come to an end. Then you take a small lane on the left, as you can see in that picture, bottom left. Then after 10 metres up that lane, take the footpath on the right alongside and to the right of a garage. Follow the path through the woods. And there will be lots of luminous orange tape out on this section. Stay in the woods and exit past the farm. Previously you dropped down and followed a long road section before regaining height. As it comes out past the farm, please keep the noise down. This is a shorter and nicer route than previous years, so please make sure you have the current GPS trace, otherwise you'll add an extra mile onto your route. Turn left on the road, then after around 50 metres the checkpoint is on the right in Fedwin Farm. There is a short out and back into the checkpoint, which again you must go to. And please remember there are no supporters or crews at the checkpoint. So leave the checkpoint, continue heading up the lane. At the top of the lane, take the track into the forest as seen in the picture here. There'll be a running arrow onto that track. You follow the track down to the valley floor, past the houses, then at the main road at the bottom, turn left and follow the road alongside the river. So just be careful here. It will be late at night, but you do get some fast cars on that road, so just keep your wits about you. After about 80 metres along that road, there's some houses on your right, as you can see in the picture. On the bottom right, there you turn right just before those houses. Again, I'll put some tape out on that turn in. but it's a subtle turn in, takes you down to a footbridge that crosses over the river. After crossing the river, you go initially straight uphill, which brings you out on a cycle path, and you'll turn left and head into the village. And there'll be some tape out along that part of the route. As you head through the village, you're going to head straight through the village, but just after the school, you're going to look for this turn-in on the top right, which will take you over the viaduct. Again, there'll be running arrows on there, but keep an eye on the GPS trace as you're going through the village, and it'll take you over a big bridge over the river. At the end of the bridge, you turn right, and you're going to head down into the forestry car park. So when you arrive in the forest car park of Asylum, take the forest track in the right corner of the car park, as seen in the picture on the bottom left. This will then take you to cross over the bridge over the river. Very simple to follow. Once you're on that track, it's easy to follow. There'll also be signs on that junction. Keep following the signs and tape up through the forest. So you're going to merge out the forest into Bryn. At that point, there's a road to cross, which does have cars travelling at quite fast speeds sometimes. It's a 40-mile-an-hour road, but they do tend to go a little bit faster. You're going to cross that road and then head up, as seen on that picture. You're going to head up to the left of the pub. You're going to head up through the residential areas. The checkpoint is in the forest, so you need to follow our signs. We'll put signs out all the way up into the forest. When you get to the forest car park, you keep going up through the forest car park, and the checkpoint will be about 200 meters up the forest track. It's important to highlight here that there's no crews in Bryn, and there's also, just to remind you, just to keep quiet as it is a residential area. Okay, leave the checkpoint, follow the running arrows and tape at all the major junctions. Just keep an eye out for your GPS trace as well. It's important here just to highlight this is a slightly different and shorter route to previous years through this section. So if you have been on the course before a while ago, don't just go on autopilot, as you will add a bit of extra distance. As you head into Margam Park, follow the GPS trace on a good track and road through the park. Be careful and watch out for deer running wild through the park. As you exit the park in the far corner, you turn right through the gate, and then once you hit the main road, 100 meters or so out of the gate, the main A48 road, turn left along that road and follow the cycle path all the way into Pyle. Straightforward section. As you enter Pyle, just after the petrol station, you turn right immediately before St James's Church and follow the footpath as can be seen in the top right picture. You follow that footpath behind the church, exiting the footpath as seen on that middle right picture, and then you cross over the bridge. Once you cross that bridge, you're looking for this cycle path as seen on the bottom right picture, which runs alongside the stream. You follow the cycle path through the houses, exiting that cycle path as seen in the top left picture, and follow the road signposts and our arrows again, and tape to Kenfig Sands. This may be another area, just double check in on Google Maps or Google Street View. You've got some extra time this week. 6 is at Kenfig Sands in the reserve building. There'll be signposts highlighting the way in. It's also the start of the Dragon 50. You will have access to drop bag B here, so you can go through the same checks as before with your feet, phone chargers, etc. Then if it's a nice day, you look to add sun cream, sunglasses, hat, or so forth. Once you've left the checkpoint, you can follow the marked path through the sand dunes to regain the coast. And at the coast, you'll rejoin the Wales Coast Path, turn left and follow the Wales Coast Path back to Cardiff. Kenfig Sands is the start of the Dragon 50. For the Dragon 50 runners, there's a 4.5 mile start loop around the reserve before joining back onto the Wales coast path and heading back to Cardiff Bay. The first checkpoint for the Dragon 50 is at the reserve building. It'll be outside, so you can make a quick get in and get out. It's once you've completed that loop. The loop's well signposted, it's fully signposted and marked. It's on the GPS trace as well. It's important here that if you're on the Dragon 100, you don't do that extra start loop. So once you hit the coast, you take a left. And for those Dragon 50 runners, the first time you hit the coast, you'll go round to the right. And the second time, then you want to follow the route back to Cardiff. You follow the coast path along West Bay. There's clear and obvious signs. You follow it into Porthcawl. Once you get to Porthcawl Harbour, you'll reach Coney Bay Fairground. You can head straight across the fairground, hugging the top wall by the beach, to the far end of that fairground, past the car park. Then literally follow the sand and coast. Along the coast, takes you into checkpoint 7 and checkpoint 2, which is in Newton Village in the car park right on the front. You'll literally run straight into the checkpoint. So once you've left the checkpoint, you head straight across the long beach and head all the way to the estuary at the far end. Not far from the estuary, you'll see a Wales Coast Path sign which takes you into the Merthyr Mawr Sand Dune Complex. Just keep an eye on your GPS trace here and look out for signs. There are, as all sand dune areas, lots of little offshoots and paths. The main path is relatively straightforward to follow. Once you reach the main car park at Merthyr Mawr, you'll head out onto the road and in towards the village. As you go through the village, you're looking for the Wales Coast Path signs on your right, which will take you down a right turn and over a small bridge to cross over the river. There will be no run, walk, crawl arrows on this section, but just to be aware, there is a race there the day before. So just be aware that there may be some leftover signage from that race, but we won't be putting any signs out, so keep to the GPS trace and keep to the Wales Coastal Path official route. Once you have crossed the first bridge, you will then head towards Ogmore by Sea Castle and the Stepping Stones. Here the faster 100-mile runners may need to take the high tide route, but for the majority of runners arriving here 2 hours either side of high tide or at low tide, you should be fine to cross. Once you've crossed the Stepping Stones, follow the well-marked coastal path back alongside the river estuary to Ogmore by Sea, Rivermouth Car Park, and just watch out for fast-moving cars on that road after you have crossed the Stepping Stones. So there is that tidal considerations slide again from earlier in the presentation. This is for the Ogmore Stepping Stones. So just to recap, if you are there close to high tide, you may need to follow the high tide route. Obviously don't cross them if the tide is too high or is too dangerous. Follow the high tide route. There's no real difference in time or distance, and if you don't fancy crossing them, there's no penalties if you do decide to just take the high tide route anyway. And follow the Wales Coast Path along the coast to the checkpoint at Saverndown. Into the beach car park, you're going to take a left turn. Checkpoint is in the Heritage Centre. So from Saverndown to Llantwit, the route is super simple. The coast path hugs the top of the cliffs. As long as you keep the sea on your right and the land on the left, you keep going along. There's lots of Wales Coast Path signs. When you get to Llantwit checkpoint, there's drop bags available for both race distances. The picture on the right is a picture of a kiosk that's at Nash Point, so that's by the lighthouse, about halfway between the two checkpoints. There's toilets there, and there's a coffee shop and kiosks. The Llantwit checkpoint allows you access to the drop bag for the Dragon 100 and Dragon 50 racers. Another opportunity here to change your shoes and socks, sort your feet out, grab an extra warm layer for later on the evening. Check your head torch and phone battery is all good. And you can grab some resupplied food for later in the race. So the next section again is super simple, just follows along the cliff top. As you reach Aberthor, you'll run into the car park, which is by the power station. Checkpoints in the car park, same as those that have done the Vale race.
This is the section with the diversion. On the day, the diversion will be marked with running arrows and orange tape. So the GPS follows the yellow line. You can see the diversion route marked by the yellow line, which you must follow. And the picture also shows the closed part of the coast path in red, which is out of bounds. Essentially, the diversion follows a short footpath inland and heads right along a track before rejoining the coast, Pebble Beach, and the coast path. Please ensure you stick to the signposted route. From Aberthor to Porthcurry Park is a really straightforward section. Essentially, it's our Vale race in reverse. The checkpoint at Porthcurry Park is in the lodge. Now, the lodge is near the car park by the cafe and toilets. So as you come in towards the park, make sure you take a left turn and head into the checkpoint. You must go to that checkpoint.
Then once you have been to the checkpoint, head back towards the sea and then regain the coastal path, going up those Roman steps. Please also remember that you must go on the coast path up those Roman steps. You cannot cut the corner by crossing this section on the stone beach. At the top of the Roman steps, you'll follow along the Wales coast path for a bit and then you'll drop down towards the Nap. You go round the Nap and then you start heading towards the island. As you come to Barry Island, this is an important area to pay attention to. You'll cross over onto the island on Harbour Road. This will be signed on the race, but just keep your eyes peeled. It's also important here to highlight that you're not going around the island like you do on the Vale races. You're going to cut from this path straight across to Asda and follow around the docks. Halfway along Harbour Road, there's a turn in, as you can see in that picture on the top left, which takes you off the road. It's a bike path and takes you down towards the car park. Once you come off that turn in, you'll end up coming down the slope. As you can see in that bottom right picture there, you'll end up in a car park. You're going to take an immediate left and cross under that underpass, under Harbour Road. And that final photo, top right, just shows you where you'll come out under the underpass and you turn left to regain the coast path. Follow past Asda, past the docks, and you don't turn right and head into the island. Again, keep an eye on the signs. We're going to signpost that area there, our yellow running arrows, but also keep an eye on your GPS trace. As you leave the docks, you'll be running along a cycle path past the council buildings, and then approximately 400 metres after those buildings, start looking out for a right turn as seen in the bottom left picture. There will be yellow arrows on the lamppost. We'll mark it up well, and this just takes you to the coast a bit earlier and gets you onto the trail a bit quicker than if you follow the official Wales coast path. So to continue straight on, when you hit the roundabout, you're going to cross straight over the roundabout. You're going to head in through some industrial areas, and then you're looking to regain the coast path, as you can see there on the bottom right hand picture. Again, we'll put running arrows out to mark this section to help guide you onto that coast path, and then you'll follow the coast path left along into the checkpoint. And that checkpoint is now indoors in the Cricket Club Pavilion at Sully.
That Sully checkpoint is literally on the Wales coast path. Once you leave the checkpoint, you'll follow the coast path along, heading towards Cardiff. After a couple of 100 metres, you'll go through a sports field, Sully sports field. This is where the old 50 and 100 mile checkpoint was. And once you've exited that field, you'll head out onto Beach Road.
About 100 metres down the road, you'll come to a pub car park. It's not clear where the coast path goes, but if you stick to the right of the car path, literally hug as close to the sea wall as you can, the Wales coast path sign is at the far right corner of the car park. When you get there, it's obvious, but it is hidden until you get into that far right corner. So all the way through the car park to the far right corner. Once you come into Penarth, you'll see the pier on your right. You just carry on past the pier for about another 100 metres, and then you'll come to a centre called the Kaimin Centre, again on your right. Just after the Kaimin Centre, you need to turn right up some small steps, and they can be seen in that bottom left picture. It's signposted Wales Coast Path, and we'll also put some extra running arrows out on that section, and then we'll flag the section there from that point there down onto the bay, onto the barrage. As you come down the hill towards the bay, you'll see a roundabout, and you'll see the bay and the barrage in front of you, and at that roundabout you're going to go straight over, cross over the barrage, and then just follow clear and obvious cycle path around the bay, eventually coming out of the Norwegian church to the finish.
The finish is at the Norwegian church by the Captain Scott Memorial at Cardiff Bay. It's a great location, there's views across the bay, the cafe is open late into the night. It would be great to get as many friends and family to come down to cheer you all in. It's important to have a warm jacket and change your clothes, put on when you finish. Probably keep them in your drop bag. When you finish, collect your meal ticket from the marshal, hang around and enjoy the atmosphere.
And to recap the key points for the Dragon 100 runners: when you get to Oxwich Bay, cross the bay on the sand. At the stream, head inland and use the bridge. And shortly after the bridge, you need to head up to the top of the cliffs. Follow the marked Wales Coast Path high tide routes at Three Cliffs Bay and at Caswell Bay. At the far end of Langland Bay, turn left, head inland and follow the roads and a run, walk, crawl arrows at each junction to the Mumbles checkpoint. And keep vigilant for signs and the GPS track through the Avon Forest sections. And some summary points for the Dragon 100 and Dragon 50 runners. Be careful when crossing all roads. Follow the Wales Coast Path signs to the stepping stones at Ogmore. At the stepping stones, if the tide is high, follow the high tide route.
Follow our running arrows at the Wales Coast Path diversion between Lantwit and Aberthor at Summerhouse Point. At Porthcurry Park, turn left inland and head to the lodge by the car park, toilets and cafe.
In Barry, turn right halfway down Harbour Road to the car park, then go left under the underpass and regain the Wales Coastal Path by Asda. You do not need to go around Barry Island. At Cardiff Bay, cross the barrage, then follow the cycle path around the bay to the finish at the Norwegian church. If in doubt or if you are lost, you should call the Run Walk Crawl race phone. That number is provided on the map, and you should add that into your contacts on your race phone before you start. We will give you advice. We will see you on the GPS trackers, and we'll be able to guide you back onto the route. Good luck, stay safe, look after each other, enjoy yourselves, and always say thank you to the volunteers. Thank you for listening, and we will see you on race day.